Interesting that Bijan Robinson is ranked 7th for a rookie.
You seen the mustache on Arthur Smith? That boy loves to run the football. Loves to run the football. And Bijan is
What does that have to do with a
crazy
mustache?
talented. It's old school. He's got that old school mustache. He's got the old school.
That's
What's going on, man?
Hey, son.
Made it back. Made it back from the beach.
Back in the man cave.
Back in the man cave, the man lair. This is where Pop records all his episodes at, as we like to call it, an undisclosed location somewhere in Maryland. How you doing today, Pop?
Doing good. Doing good. Ready for another pod? Are we technically set today, son?
We're all good to go. We're all good to go.
As much as I enjoyed doing 2 podcasts for the price of 1 last week, I'd like to say that we can just keep it to no rehearsal this week.
Hey, if the gods of Apple stay with us today, we'll be good. Everything within our control is rolling the way it should be. So today we are going to start off with some Commanders training camp talk, because what else is there to talk about this time of year? It's August. Football is right around the corner. We're starting to get the beginning ideas of what this team may or may not look like. So let's get right into it. We want to start, I think, this segment off. We want to talk about our biggest reasons for optimism and our biggest reasons for concern coming out of training camp in the moment. So, Pop, why don't you kick that one off?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest concern is we've heard reports that the offense has been a bit rough. Now, in terms of just the defense seems to be getting the upper hand. I guess to some extent you'd expect that because our defense is a top 5 defense by all accounts.
Definitely.
But a little concerning that you're seeing the offensive line get dominated to the degree that they are, seeing the quarterback struggle a little bit, based on reports, some up days, some down days. So I'd say, generally the general operation of the offense is where, based on the reports, I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. I think the offense is definitely my main concern. To back off of that, to get a little more specific, I guess it's probably that offensive line. Yeah. I was talking to a buddy of mine last night. He actually works in the NFL, and he was kind of asking me, he's like, hey, what's your take on this Commander situation? What do you think? And I'm like, I love the idea of Sam Howell. I think we're doing all the right things in terms of giving the young guy the shot. The offensive line makes me really nervous because we've seen Ron do this patchwork offensive line thing since he's gotten here, and it's just kind of never worked out exactly the way we've wanted it to. So that offensive line is definitely my biggest point of concern, because I think Sam Howell, I think we should have our expectations at maybe he's average. We hope he's average. That would be great if he can be average this year in his first year as a 5th rounder, the whole thing. So offensive line is definitely my biggest point of concern. What about optimism, though? How are you
I think maybe just one quick point on that concern is if you look back to the draft, right, the fact that they went corner, or corner safety, depending on Quan Martin versus addressing the offensive line on one of those 2 first picks. I mean, both those players look like great players in terms of Forbes and Martin, but it makes you wonder whether that was the right call or not.
Definitely. And you look at, Pittsburgh moved up, I think a couple picks ahead of us. I think they moved up to like 14 to take Broderick Jones, and it cost them like a 4th rounder.
Right.
And to take a guy that is raw, but in terms of his physical skill set, you're looking at this guy has the potential to be a generational talent at the position if he can be developed right. You wonder why we're not taking a swing at a guy like that, especially when a guy like Quan Martin is there in the 2nd round. You saw Joey Porter Jr. even fall down to the 2nd round. Quarterbacks were falling down the board the way that it went. But that's the way Ron drafts. We've seen it year after year after year. He goes after his guys. He doesn't care about value as much. He cares about getting the guy that he had his heart set on getting at the beginning of the draft. So we'll see how it pans out.
Especially if you consider the rookie linemen that we do have seem buried, in the depth chart right now. The I forget his name, but the undrafted free agent seems to be having the best camp
of all the offensive linemen, which is concerning. Honestly, he's the only guy I'm hearing positive reports of across the board. I mean, people like Nick Gates' leadership, but no, of course not.
I hate when you do that to me, by the way. I'll find it.
That's the problem with this offensive line. That's why I think it's got to be our number one concern, and in general, just a serious issue. I mean, we're hearing reports of the twos faring better than the ones. We're hearing reports of Chris Paul going to be our starting left guard. I mean, this is a guy that we took with our second, 7th round pick last year. And he's going to be our starting left guard.
Yeah, I mean, there's talk of him outplaying Sadiq Charles, even though they seem set on giving Sadiq every opportunity. But of course, he's nicked up again.
I mean, Sadiq Charles, I think he's the Samaje Perine of this coaching staff. They just love that guy.
Don't sleep on Samaje.
They just love. I'm slapped on Samaje. They just love that guy. There's no reason. That is your plan starting at left guard. That's nuts. And he can't stay healthy. He's never been able to stay healthy for the last 3-4 years he's been in the league. And even when he's been healthy, he hasn't been good. So I don't know what we're doing there. Let's move on. I think let's look a little bit positive as you look for this this young man's name that deserves some credit here.
I don't think I'm going to be able to pick it out here.
Anyways,
move on.
Let's move on. So
this is why it's a fans podcast, right?
We don't claim to be reporters here. So optimism wise, for me, I'll start it off here. It's got to be the secondary. Right. I am excited, and I'll tell you why. Because I was talking to, again, my friend last night about it, and I said, offensively, I'm concerned. Defensively, this unit has the potential to be historic. Because that secondary, if they're really shaping up, the secondary looks like they are good enough to carry a defense on their own right now. That's what we're hearing. And you pair that with the front that we have. I mean, last year we got, what would you say, maybe B-, C+ secondary play?
Right.
And our defensive front was just A+. If this year we can get A- secondary play and A+ out of that front four, that's terrifying. I mean, there's just nothing you can do. And you look at the guys, you look at the amount of talent. If we're running that 5-man front, you've got 4 first and a 2nd-round pick. You look at in the secondary now, you got Kendall Fuller, one of the smartest players in the league in the secondary, highly regarded amongst the league. Benjamin St. Juste looks like a star in camp, looking really good. Hopefully he can stay healthy. That's going to be a big question. But even if he can't stay healthy, then you've got Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin. And then in this, when you look at our safeties, you've got Derek Forrest and Cam Curl. Percy Butler has yet to even be able to see the field, and I still think he's very talented. We're loaded in the secondary, so that's where I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I think I was going to use a broader defense in general, right? The way that, Chase has looked, and, it's going to be a recurring theme, in terms of don't sleep, but don't sleep on Montez Sweat. No one seems to be talking about Montez Sweat at all because of the buzz between Chase and the interior guys. Chase has looked great. Of course, Forbes looks like the real deal. And, what about Cam Curl, right? You just hear nothing but great things about Cam Curl, to mention a couple of other guys, that you didn't mention. Maybe still some concern at the linebacker spot. Jamin Davis got a bit of a lead foot, it appears.
Yes.
Keeps getting speeding tickets, but
we drafted him for his speed.
There you go.
Big side-to-side guy.
But I think just defense in general, there's a lot to be excited about there.
I agree. And I think, we've been saying it for years now, literally, and we're going to keep saying it till we're blue in the face. I think if you can get average offensive play with this defense, you've got a team that could at least make the playoffs, if not maybe win a game.
Yep. A defense gives you a lot of hope, that's for sure.
All right, so moving on from the optimism and concern bit here, let's talk real quick. I just want to touch on it. There's a lot of buzz around training camp in general now, and things look completely different, even though it's only been a couple of weeks. So what do you think about the impact of the new ownership on the training camp right now? Josh Harris working directly with the players, some of Ron's comments in the presser. Just let's give a quick hit on that, Pop. I'll let you run that bit.
Yeah, just seeing the excitement around training camp, the 10,000 fans that showed up last week. We touched on that a little bit on last week's pod. Just the turnout in general, the excitement of the fans, but also the presence of Josh Harris. he's there. There's a video I put out, a short I put out of him dapping up with Terry McLaurin. I mean, he's a presence there. And also, according to Ron in his presser, he's actually talking to the players about what can we do to make things better. And one of the players spoke up and said, better accommodations for our families at games, a safe space, places, that are kid friendly, for, even talk of changing tables for babies and stuff like that. So the fact that he's engaging the players at that level and that he's listening, and I'm sure he's going to take action on that. Apparently his wife has been pretty active in those discussions. I think it's great to see. It's got to make the players, feel more appreciated in general. And, the honeymoon period continues, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, he's like a Kennedy. It's just incredible. I mean, it's awesome. So I'm very excited about Josh Harris and all the great things he's done. I think you touched on all of those. Don't want to spend too much time because there's so much good football to talk about. So let's just go ahead and blaze right forward here. Pop, you called it a QB competition here on the outline that I'm looking at. You said we shouldn't sleep on Jacoby Brissett.
I didn't say that.
That's what it says.
No, I didn't say that. That's a quote from Ron Rivera at his press conference. They asked him about, Sam Howell. All right, I'll set this up. They asked him about Sam Howell and how he's progressing. And Ron was, I would say, guarded in his compliment. He was complimentary, but it wasn't like effusive. And he said, we really need to see good performance from Sam in preseason. And his quote was, don't sleep on Jacoby Brissett. I really like our quarterback room in general. So what do we make of those comments? It caught a little bit of fire in that they're, is Jacoby going to end up being the starter? What do we really make of it? What's your take on that?
I make nothing of it personally. I think this is exactly like when he went and got Ryan Fitzpatrick and he spent $10 million on him, and then he spent the entire preseason talking about, it's going to be an open competition between him and Taylor. Taylor will have every opportunity to win the job if he can. If you saw Ryan Fitzpatrick play, he was one of the only quarterbacks in the league that looked worse than Taylor Heineke in his 3 quarters that he did play before he got hurt. Clearly had no business being out there. Still rolled out there because he was the starter demon going into camp.
Ryan
the water slide demon. Yes, sir. So I think it's the same situation here. I think he's just trying to keep Sam's head where he feels like he needs to keep Sam's head. I think this is a little bit of Ron's old school, bordering on out of touchness mentality with the whole everybody's got to compete all the time thing. I think it's good in general. I think we got to see with a guy like Sam Howell, a young guy, does he have the fortitude to stick through that? If he doesn't, clearly he's not the guy. But I think until we see Jacoby Brissett getting regular reps with the ones in practice, there's just no way that's the plan. There's no way.
It's an interesting dynamic there. Sorry, do you want to finish your thought?
I was just gonna say, you look at this year, you look at the whole situation with Ron. If he really thought there was a chance Jacoby would start, they'd at least be splitting reps. Because there's no way you want to run your starting quarterback out there week 1 and he's not getting any reps with the first team.
That's a good point.
There's no way. So until I hear reports, so far I haven't been there, you haven't been there, but all the reports are saying it's only Sam working with the ones. So until we see Jacoby out there working on developing chemistry with Terry and Jahan and the offensive line and running with the ones, I have no concern about him starting.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it's much ado about nothing. I think that, what I hear reports, the reports we are hearing, JP Finley was pretty passionate, where JP marks, right? And that he was pretty passionate in saying he just really didn't think there was any controversy. I think the biggest tell, you said it, is that Sam is getting all the first team reps. So, they're giving him every opportunity. And I think in general, from what I'm hearing, he looks like the better quarterback as well. But what I hate about it all is, why does Ron interject that? To me, it comes across as self-protection, self-preservation, right? And that's what I think there's an interesting dynamic there of that. The best thing for this franchise, without a question, going into the season is to start Sam Howell, right? Let's see what we have in this kid. Even if he doesn't always look like the better of the two guys, you almost expect, in some cases, given his experience, that Jacoby's going to look more solid, more consistent. But it just, the dynamic of Ron and Eric Bieniemy having to perform this year. We talked about it last pod being an audition year, not just for Ron, but for EB as well. You know, it are they going to make what's the best decision for the team? I think in the end, it's a lot of smoke. I think we're going to see Sam, as the starter, and he's going to be given a decent amount of rope to perform. But yeah, I mean, it creates some headlines unnecessarily, in my opinion.
100%. And to that point about it being an audition year, let's not forget, being a head coach in the NFL is about more than just X's and O's and who's starting and who's on the bench. It's about these press conferences. It's about the way he's handling the media. And we know Josh Harris is looking at all of that. He's looking at this. He's looking at the way Ron's addressing the media and talking about these things. He's looking at how does what he tells the media translate to the fan experience, translate to what we see on the field, all that stuff. So we're seeing much of the same of what we're used to from Ron Rivera. Who knows how briefed Josh Harris has been on that, and who knows how it's being received. But I think it's an interesting thing to follow from more of like a reality TV drama standpoint on the perspective of Ron rather than actually the quarterback competition, because I don't think there is one. I say we move on from there. Let's check out that preseason game.
We got football coming up this week.
I am stoked.
Effectively, this is our pregame pod.
This is our first pregame pod of the season. I didn't even think about that. That's exciting. Preseason game number 1, Friday, August 11th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time against the Cleveland Browns. Jacoby Brissett's old team.
Popcorn ready.
Get the popcorn ready. This is the revenge game. We're rolling Carson Wentz out with the ones to avenge what he did.
What?
No, God forbid. God forbid. I will be wearing purple if that happens. That'll be the last straw. But 7:30 against the Browns. What are we most excited to see? What are some of our expectations? How long you think the starters are going to play? Let's just give a overarching here pregame, preseason preview.
It's funny because you always get so fired up about preseason games and watching them, and then by halftime or maybe into the second half, you're kind of like fading out, checking your phone a lot more. But I think what are we most excited to see? Got to say that offense in general. I'm going to maybe not make it as simple as quarterback, although it's the obvious answer is Sam Howell is what we're most excited to see. But just to see the offense, and, I guess they're going to probably try to keep it pretty vanilla. So I don't know how much of, EB system that we'll see, but just see how the offense operates, and in terms of like how long the starters go, it's another interesting thing because of the challenges we have on offensive line. I think Ron pretty much indicated that, he's not going to have Sam in there without the starting offensive line. But then again, you got to kind of protect Jacoby too. So it's going to be interesting. It's a different challenge that they've got going on and figuring out the playing time for this game because of that offensive line. Although, if you said the backups are looking just as good as the starters, maybe it doesn't matter as much. But yeah, I got to be most excited to see just that offense in general and how they perform.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I hope he plays. I doubt he'll play. I kind of want to see Myles Garrett go against this offensive line. That'll be a pretty quick humbling experience. I mean, that guy's got to be the best pass rusher in the league, if not one of them.
Yeah, he's up there.
We'll see how we can handle that offensively, see how Sam gets the ball out. I would hope we do get to see a little bit of that from Cleveland's perspective. Why would you even waste your time playing him? Who knows?
Well, remember, it's 3 preseason games, so really his first and second game, Cleveland's already got a game in the bank.
Yep.
Too. But I think you gotta play the guys because no one's gonna play in the third game.
No, definitely not. So do you think Howell gets 1 quarter? Do you think Howell gets 2-3 drives? How long do you think Howell is in there before Brissett comes in? And when Howell comes out, do you think we go to the 2s, or do you think Brissett gets a little bit of chance to run with the 1s?
Yeah, I just don't think you can really do that in terms of just, it's not so much about Jacoby, it's about the rest of the players. And I think that you're going to see Sam Howell for about a quarter, maybe a quarter and change. I think it's going to be a little longer than, we talked about this earlier, than what you would typically see out of a starter. I think you might see Jacoby for the rest of the first half, maybe slightly into the second half. And then I think it's going to be, Jake Fromm show at that point, So
yep.
I think that, that's what I would expect from the playing time situation.
I'm personally thinking about the same. I think maybe in game 2 we'll see Howell get the whole first half or something like that. I don't know. I remember I'm used to the 4-game preseason format, and I remember it always used to be game 3 where the starters would play almost the whole first half, and that was really when you got to see, okay, what does this team have? So maybe we see that, but overall, I think in general the focus is going to be keeping things pretty vanilla. They don't want to give away too much film, especially a guy like Bieniemy. Be a little trickier with his offense. You don't want to give too much of that away.
And that game too, and they're going to go right into these joint practices after this first preseason game, which we can chop up a little more on next week's pod. And that game too is against the Ravens. It is a home game. So that's going to be interesting, right? Where you're going to see a lot of times that Ravens game is pretty meaningless in preseason, still pretty meaningless preseason game. But we're probably going to see the most out of the starters with both groups in that game. So I think it's getting interesting, right? It's heating up. We're 5 weeks away, I believe, from the season opener.
It is getting
We're rolling downhill now.
I'm so excited. It's like it'll be like that, and before you know it, it's going to be November, and we're going to be going, oh my God, it's week 11 already. I've lost $400 on Underdog. What is happening? We're going to be right in the blender. But until then, we've got all the excitement. This is the best time of the year for me.
Yeah.
The football season. It's like the night before vacation.
It's going to be our first post-game pod of the season too. So we can have our award segment for those of you, we got a lot of new listeners since last season, but we give out awards, and we give our Kikats of the game, which is the anti-award of the game. So we'll be rolling all of that out in a quick post-game segment.
Yeah, I mean, last year, that Kikats of the game, there was a lot of competition for that award. So hopefully this year it's a little harder to give out. Maybe it's a false start somewhere in the second quarter. But thank God we're not running out with the same quarterbacks we're running out last year. So hopefully the Kikats a little different.
The only thing, the other concern, I think, is we are seeing some guys starting to get nicked up. That's the only serious injury was to Bada.
And Rodgers as well in OTAs.
Right. Rodgers and OTAs, where we're starting to see guys get nicked up and get held out of practice, but luckily nothing too serious, but that might impact who plays 100%, in that first game.
100%. Stars are looking good. There's already talk of Curtis Samuel.
Logan Thomas,
a little bit. Yeah, it's a lot of the guys that you kind of expect, unfortunately, to get a little bit nicked up or a little bit nicked up. Maybe we can see Cole Turner actually get onto the field. That would be great. Hopefully Logan Thomas can play. But we'll see. We'll just have to see. We're going to find out all kinds of stuff. I feel like every year you go into the year and you have certain expectations about certain position groups and certain issues. And then by the end of the year, you go, like last year, secondary, pleasant surprise. Going into the year, we're going, this secondary is awful. And then all of a sudden, Benjamin St. Juste comes into his own. Derek Forrest comes into his own.
Right.
I'm hoping we see the same for this year. I think you can kind of predict where things are going to be weak, but you just never know. First bit of data on that is going to be Friday. So super excited about that. So, Pop, enough real football. What do you say we make the pivot?
Speaking of exciting things that are upcoming.
So a little bit of background here. So this curse on the Tenalias started 3 seasons ago in Ocean City, Maryland. I'm on Instagram Live. Pop has no idea where I'm going with this, but trust the process here. I'm on Instagram Live watching my friend spin the wheel for who gets the first pick in our fantasy football draft. And what does it land on? Me. Dom of the Dom and Pop Show. And I draft Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey played 3 games that year. I won 3 games that year. I finished last place. It was terrible. The year after, who gets the number 1 pick again? Dom. Because I finished last, so I got the pick. Who did I take? Jonathan Taylor. Kikatsa Jonathan Taylor. Useless last year. I had a great team. If Jonathan Taylor could have been average, I would have won a championship.
Drop off from him, right?
If he could have been average. I mean, if Jonathan Taylor could have been as good as Brian Robinson, I would have won a championship. But he was awful.
Easy, son.
Awful. So this year, thank God, I picked like 6, 7, 4. I'm in the middle of all the rounds. 13 in one league. But Pop, I've passed the torch to you.
Yep.
You have the number 1 pick
in the
family league, which is the highest stakes league, the family fantasy league.
So I definitely would love to hear in the comments who I should go with this number 1 pick. I hate it. I'm gonna say that right away. I freaking hate having a number one pick. It's so much pressure in terms of it could just make or break you, and then you got to wait what 20 more slots before you get the pick again.
Yep.
I mean, then you get back-to-back picks. So I'm already kind of mapping out how I want that to work. I'm almost thinking of my second and third picks a little more so than the first one. But I mean, reading off this top players, it's interesting because there seems to be a shift from running back to receiver as being the consensus top picks. And I'm not going to give away my top picks, although I am looking for some advice from you, son, on what I should do here. But there's Justin Jefferson, Vikings. To me, he's getting the number one ranking. I'm going off ESPN's rankings here, so I know there are some differences depending on the service. I've seen Jamar Chase at the top of the list. I guess there's some dependency on Joe Burrow's health there. Christian McCaffrey's 2. Austin Eckler's 3. I don't know about that. Jamar Chase is 4. Saquon Barkley, I wouldn't touch him with a forklift, is number 5. Then you got your Jonathan Taylor at 6. So you get the idea. It's probably going to one of those. I love me some Travis Kelce, but I don't think I can go there with a number one pick. Interesting that Bijan Robinson is ranked 7th for a rookie.
You seen the mustache on Arthur Smith? That boy loves to run the football. Loves to run the football. And Bijan is
what does that have to do with a
crazy
mustache?
talented. It's old school. He's got that old school mustache. He's got the old school
That's
mentality.
A good one.
Thank you. I wish I could say I came up with it. I was not the
That's pretty
originator of that joke.
That's pretty good. So I don't know. I mean, I look at it and I think, McCaffrey is really tempting, right? Because I think him and in that offense, 49ers offense, I mean, as long as he's healthy, he's going to rack up points. But that's the concern. What was it? 2 seasons ago where he went out hurt real early in the season.
Yeah,
never
the season
really,
that I drafted him number 1 overall.
Yeah. I mean, so, he scares me in that respect. But again, it might be tempting to go there. I think Justin Jefferson is probably the safest pick, because I just feel like, what a great talent. Kirk is just steady and, I'll jinx it, but, he's never gets injured, from a Kirk point of view. So you got a reliable quarterback there. I don't love Austin Eckler. Jamar Chase is tempting. I think it's going to come down to be one of those 3, Jefferson, McCaffrey, or Chase. And I have not made my mind up whatsoever yet. I hate it. I wish we could trade down. Maybe I'm off my, I should be happy about getting the number 1 pick overall. But what do you think I should do? Who would you pick?
It's tough. It's really tough this year because I've been playing fantasy football for 13 years now. I've been playing it for a long time, and I have always been running backs in the first round. That's just always fundamentals.
Right.
But
that's what's different.
The years that I land with a bad pick and I've picked a wide receiver or a tight end in the first round have always been the years that I've done the best.
Right.
Because those guys that make it so high up in the wide receiver group, they're usually a little bit more consistent, a little bit more dependable. I worry about Justin Jefferson, and I'll tell you why. Justin Jefferson is last year's Cooper Kupp, basically, right?
Right.
And what did we see from Cooper Kupp the year after?
Who's not in that top group because he's now hurt.
Yeah. So a little bit different, a lot of workload. When these guys, they put so many miles on the tires, I just get very nervous. I don't like to – it's almost like buying a stock.
But what is he in his third year? He's young.
Jefferson's young. Jefferson's young. He's an amazing talent. I mean, I told you when we were at the beach, I said we could be watching the best wide receiver of all time at the beginning of his career right now in Justin Jefferson. I think that is the limit for him. He's unbelievable. But I just have this philosophy in my head that statistically it is so hard to finish number 1 2 years in a row.
Right.
So I can't get away from that, and I know it's not logical. I know that the math doesn't back it up, but that's just where I'm at mentally. McCaffrey scares me because Kyle Shanahan never likes to just use one running back. Now, McCaffrey is incredibly talented. You can put him out at the wide receiver position, but you just have so many mouths to feed in that offense.
I'm not at all worried about that part.
If you look at the numbers of McCaffrey when Elijah Mitchell was healthy versus when he was hurt, because you forget the backup running back, Elijah Mitchell, who was very good the year before, he got hurt. He got hurt bad. I think he blew his knee out last year. If you look at the difference in those numbers, there's a big drop-off.
But you could make the reverse argument there, is that all the weapons means that you can't necessarily key on McCaffrey, and I think he's going to eat. I think as long as he's healthy, he's going to eat. To me, he would be my unquestioned number one if I wasn't worried about the injury.
I agree. And the combination of the injuries and the situation in San Fran with all those mouths to feed and with the way Kyle likes to spread the ball around makes me stay away from McCaffrey at the number one, which brings us to Jamar Chase, who personally for me, I would probably pick at number one without the Joe Burrow injuries. Now, what the hell is going on with Joe Burrow?
We'll have time.
That's
right? The draft
scary,
isn't
right?
until Labor Day weekend. So I've got time to hear the reports on Joe Burrow, see if he's going to play game one. That's definitely going to be a factor in all of this. Like I said, it's those three guys to me are at the top of the list, and I could talk myself into any one of the three at this point. The thing that I feel with McCaffrey is that injury concern, I just feel like I'll jinx it. I feel like there's just more of an opportunity where I'm going to jinx it with him versus I feel like for whatever the reason, and again, I'm probably putting the jinx on it there, is I don't feel as much of the concern with Jefferson or Chase because they're younger players and they don't have that injury history so much. But yeah, we'll see. Good problem to have, I guess.
I will make the case for one more guy very quickly.
Yes, sir.
If you want stability,
don't say Saquon Barkley.
Hell no. If you want stability, Austin Eckler is something you should really consider. And if you feel strongly about the guys that you can get in that second and third round, I would really look at Austin Eckler because I think his floor out of all these guys is probably the highest. You can't predict injury. You shouldn't draft predicting injury. That's just kind of a philosophy of mine. But Austin Eckler, if he can stay healthy, you look at a guy that can just do it all. I think an incredibly underrated talent across the league. He can go in between the center and the guard and, power it up the middle for 2 yards. He can catch passes. He can run it to the outside. He's quick. He's shifty in open spaces. And Justin Herbert is a guy, he's got a little bit of that Kirk Cousins in him. 3rd and 16, if he doesn't have anybody, he might go for 3 yards down to Austin Eckler. He might. So those kind of situations, you see Austin Eckler eat, and you see that's where Herbert's numbers come from.
And that's what that's what I hate about having the number one pick, because I think when you look down, you think guys like Eckler, we talked about Kelsey, and what about a Tyreek Hill? Like the guys you could pick in that, 4 to 10 range, and then be able to bounce back and have your next pick that much faster. I just think, what do you think? Is it an advantage or a disadvantage being a number one pick in the draft?
I think in a 10-team league like we're in, I think it's a disadvantage. I actually prefer to be later in the rounds in 10-team leagues, just because I think the odds of
Commish did me dirty.
Got you in trouble, man. Got you in trouble. But yeah, I think in a bigger league, like I'm in a 14-team league, I think then the number one pick is a clear advantage, because once you start getting into that 11 to 14 range, the drop off is pretty steep. I wouldn't be mad at you taking Travis Kelce number one either, but we could sit here and talk about this all day.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one. I think if he's
love Kelce.
Number 6, I think I'm probably going to take him.
Don't give away your secrets.
That's fine. My secret is every year I do way too much fantasy football prep. This year I'm not doing any prep.
There you go.
That's my secret. I'm going to run a few mock drafts on the plane ride home. That's just to kind of get my sea legs. I usually spend like an hour a day, so I'm not doing that anymore this year. So, what do you say we wrap this thing up?
Let's wrap it up.
It's been a great fantasy football segment. We did the thing, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thanks for